Well, welcome to Series 2 of the MAM journals. I hadn't actually planned to do 2. I planned to do a series of 6 just for fun during lockdown. Lockdown is nearly gone now. I've enjoyed making them, and it seems that a few of you have enjoyed watching them. So I plan a second series, and I'll do a further 6 bikes. I was sticking to a standard format. I had thought about sort of sticking cameras on and going out for a ride. But at the moment I'm going to stay with a static review, as you're fairly limited as to what you can show nowadays. In the UK you can be prosecuted for using evidence on videos, so any videos you do quite rightly on the road have to be pretty tame, and there's plenty of people who do trackside reviews of bikes and they're probably better equipped to do so than I am. But what I do try and do on these journals is give people as accurate history as I can of the bike's development and some technical overviews about the basic specifications without making it too complicated. And then I like to do personal feelings and reviews as an ordinary everyday motorcyclist. So I do hope that you continue to enjoy them. Today we're going to be doing the legendary GSX R 750, a bike that's been in production for 37 years, and I hope you enjoy the review. Although this video is far too short to cover a comprehensive history of a bike that's actually been in production for 37 years, it is important to understand the early stages. The GSX R 750 was launched at the Cologne show in 1984, with general release for Europe in 1985 and in America in 1986. Contrary to many people's perceptions, including my own, the 750 was not actually the first GSX R. That honour fell to this bike, which was released in Japan in 1984. Interestingly, it did not have the 400cc engine capacity as part of its designation. That said, the 750 was the landmark bike of the now famous Gixxer range. It is believed that the bike was inspired by the successful GS 1000R endurance racer, the XR41. Suzuki were keen to leverage their racing heritage and technology and had also enjoyed success in the AMA Superbike series on a bike based on the GS 1000 and tuned by Yoshimura. In the late 70s and early 80s, engine technology and power was advancing significantly faster than frame, brake and suspension technology. Some, but not all, race organising bodies became concerned enough that they had reduced engine capacities to 750cc to allow time for the bike's handling to be improved. By the mid-80s, these changes, along with other factors, spawned the emergence of a very competitive 750cc racing class. Suzuki placed significant importance on endurance racing and were no doubt delighted when the GSX R 750 won the 1985 24-hour Le Mans race, proving that the bike was both fast and reliable. The 750 won the World Endurance Championship in both 1987 and in 1988. The bike also enjoyed early success at the Isle of Man, winning the inaugural 1985 Superstock race with the experienced Mick Grant riding. The bike made its first appearance in the AMA series at the 1986 Daytona 200, with a 21-year-old Kevin Schwantz riding. He came second to Eddie Lawson on the Yamaha. Kevin's exuberant win it or bin it style certainly captured the imagination of the fans, and although he only managed 7th in the championship, the legend had been born. Schwantz competed in the series for several years, interspersed with other racing commitments and the occasional visit to hospital. He was second in the 1987 championship and won the Daytona 200 on a bike incorporating the first evolution of the GSX R 750, the Slingshot. The 1984 to 1988 championships were actually won by Honda with Fred Merkel, and in 1988, Wayne Rainey. Kevin moved on to MotoGP, but the GSX R 750 did, in 1989, finally win the championship, with Jamie James, or as he was nicknamed, the Raging Cajun, taking the title. In latter years, with the improvements in handling, race regulators gradually approved the return of 1000cc four-cylinder engines, and series based on 750cc engines diminished. Right, so let's talk about the commercial history of the bike. I think the bike really epitomises Suzuki's philosophy, which was race on Sunday, sell on Monday. And in order to achieve that, you needed a few sort of key characteristics. You needed a bike that looked like a race bike, it needed to be reliable, it needed to be fast with good engine power, and it needed to be affordable. And the GSX R 750 Slabby, when it came out, certainly fulfilled all those criteria. Interestingly, the first one, the claimed weight was 388 pounds with 106 brake horsepower, but when the journalists got hold of it and actually sort of stuck it on scales and on dynos, those figures proved to be a little bit optimistic, but the principle was sound. It did achieve all the things it set out to do, and not surprisingly, because it did, it sold exceptionally well. All bikes develop, and obviously they developed the next range on from the Slabbies. They introduced a bike called the Slingshot. The Slingshot name is derived from the brand name that they put on their carburetors, so it's all about, and it produced a bit more power. They produced those in 1988 until 91 in Europe, and from memory 92 in the States. The engineers have been under pressure for a while to get more power, but they were struggling with cooling because the previous bike had got an oil cooling system, but they actually had to go to liquid cooling, and that significantly increased the weight. So when that came out, the 750W came out in 92, it was 208 kilograms. Can't quite remember what that is in pounds, but I'll stick it on the screen. And bear in mind, in 92, you get a Fireblade that was a bigger displacement and a lighter bike. They went through a pretty fallow period in terms of sales. And in 1995, for example, you could get a Yamaha YZ F750, which I think was probably a better bike than the Suzuki at the time. 1996, they went again, and they introduced the Cyrad, Suzuki Ram Air Direct system, all about getting more air into the bike in order to increase the power. And that was a successful bike in its own right. Very distinctive styling as well, with that hump that we later actually saw on a bike called the Hayabusa. So they did well, but they were competing against some pretty good bikes in the Fireblade and the Yamaha R1. In latter years, they introduced the K and the L series, and just to help people, I know aficionados will already know how that system works, but if you're fairly new and just interested in general history, it's about the year. So for example, the K series, a K5, which was a legendary engine in the 1000cc displacement version of this bike, was 2005, and actually the only bike from memory that won the World Superbike Series with Troy Corser on. But this bike is the L3, so it means effectively it's a 2013 bike. So anyway, let me, they did actually continue, just before I move on, they did actually continue the development in the UK. You could buy the L series until 2018. They actually formally, due to emissions, ran out of some jurisdiction in 2016, but they gave them a 2-year extension. So the latest you could buy one of these on a UK plate is a 2018, but they still actually sell them, let's say 37 years later, in America and in Australia. I'm sure they sell them in other countries too, but I happen to know for certain that those bikes are available in those areas. So let's now do a technical walk around and we'll talk about this particular bike, the L3. Right, so let's start a walk round. I think it's an attractive bike. I don't think it's the prettiest bike that I've got, nor perhaps the most rugged stroke handsome, but I think it's a very purposeful looking bike, and beauty after all is in the eyes of the beholder. Starting at the front, perfectly adequate headlamps on the few occasions that I've ridden it in the dark. Personally, I prefer the aesthetics of some of the earlier models which had twin headlamps, sort of throwing back to their endurance racing inspiration. But again, that's a personal styling preference as opposed to any comment on the functionality of the lights. It's fitted with inverted telescopic coil spring oil damped shocks, which actually I find them very good. Perfectly adequate for both road and track in its standard format. Brembo 4-pot brakes. I think some people who use them a lot on the tracks apparently change the brake pads, but I think you can just get this one out of the crate and go and have fun at a track. I think they're very, very well put together and thought through. A good bike. Engine-wise, obviously the heart of any bike. It's a 4-stroke, liquid-cooled, dual overhead cam, 4-cylinder 750cc. It's got fuel injection. This particular model produces 148 brake horsepower and weighs 190 kilograms, which in old money is 419 pounds. It's actually, it's a 600, not a small 1,000, if that makes sense. And the whole bike is a 600 package. With the bigger engine and more torque as a result of it, which I think it makes it one of the nice characteristics of the bike. One thing I will just sort of bring to your attention, and I'm now running a video, if I had £1 for every time somebody told me, oh, that's a 2-minute job, and it turns out to be a 45-minute job, I'd be a very wealthy man. But this changing the height of the pace literally is a 2-minute job. I personally like them for road riding. I like them in the lower position, just a bit more comfortable. But if I ever went track riding again, I'd probably just pop it back up again. It's probably the only thing I'd need to do to take this thing on the track, which is a credit to them, really. Rear shock is adjustable, and like most bikes, it's got a single disc at the back there, which is perfectly adequate. Right, so going round, the fuel tank is 3.7 imperial gallons. When I ride this bike, I tend to be in more enthusiastic mode. So I get mid-30s in terms of miles per gallon out of it. So that gives me a range of 130, 140 miles, which is for me perfect for a sports bike ride out. Let's just talk you through some of the technology, because there isn't much. I quite like the fact that it's not overly developed. The bike doesn't have ABS, and it doesn't have traction control or various other technical innovations which are available on other bikes, but I think it's part of the beauty. Very simple power engine mode. I can show you there. You can see where I'm dialing in, you can see the mode changing. How I'm doing that is very straightforward. There's a little switch there, and you just pull that in, it changes the mode. A is maximum power and performance, and B is a softer, reduced power. Obviously appropriate, I guess, if you're riding in very slippery conditions, although I'll be honest, I just leave it in A and work my way through it. So it's not a problem. Other characteristics, well, that angle of the front fork, the caster, is actually quite sharp at 23.4 degrees, which is one of the things that contributes to its fast handling, which I think is entirely appropriate for the bike. But it's somehow they've done it in a way it doesn't feel unstable in any way when you're pressing on a bit, and that's probably assisted by one of the little bits of technology they put in there. That steering damper is actually speed related. So the faster you go, the more the steering damper comes into effect.
which again, it just makes it's a nice bike to ride. Anyway, hopefully that gives you a basic view of the technology on the bike, and I'll now give you some personal reflections.
Right, so let's talk about personal reflections. This is the second 750 that I've owned, and I bought this actually last year because although I had one prior to that, I mistakenly sold it thinking that I'd already had other bikes that would fulfill sports bikes, my needs. But in fairness, what I like about this bike is it's a sports bike at speeds which in the UK you've got a chance of keeping your licence. Now I should probably explain that, so I'm conscious that some of you viewing are not in the UK. In the UK, if you get done for speeding up to about 100 miles an hour, you'll normally get points on your licence, and if you get to 12 points you win a push bike. So if you get done at over 100 miles an hour, then you're lucky to keep your licence on a first offence. So I rode a GSX R a few years ago, and I've got a theory that every bike that you ride has got a certain speed at which you and it feel comfortable and it's working together. And I enjoyed the 1000, and I looked down at the speed that we were going, and I thought, you're going to get banned pretty quickly on this. So I actually think the 750 is a great road bike because it actually responds at speeds which are sensible-ish. And it's fulfilling and gives you lots of feedback to ride, and it's also a bike you could frankly get out of the crate and take it to a race circuit and it would be fast. And I think that's a remarkable talent and versatility for a bike that you can buy for comparatively low money. You can buy one of these in the UK, a used one obviously, because they're no longer available new, for between £4,000 and £7,000, and that's a phenomenal amount of performance for that sort of money and handling. So I've got a lot of time for these bikes. I think they're great fun, and it's not just me that actually thinks, and at my level of riding, that thinks these are great bikes. I've spoken to and listened to a lot of very accomplished road riders and track riders who actually think that they would be faster on a 750 round most circuits in the UK than they would be on 1000, which is interesting. I'm sure the very top level professional riders would be able to maximise the power of 1000, but I think for most riders this is a very capable bike. So would I commend it? Absolutely would. I think it's a fun bike to own. I think it's very flexible, very versatile, and if you don't like a Suzuki Howl, you probably don't like motorbikes.